Good evening, whakaloflaiatu, and welcome to our news bulletin for BCN News. Leading our news tonight, the first sitting of the Niue Legislative Assembly for the year was held yesterday morning. In a whanoi kapule first, Premier Dalton Tangelangi presented a midterm report of his administration since taking over premiership June of 2020. Almost all members were in attendance except for member from Namkulu, Jack Willie Lipita, who was unwell, and Common Role member Richard Heeper, who remains in New Zealand on medical referral. Premier Dalton Tangelangi delivered his midterm report, highlighting some of his government's achievements and the work in progress.
Honourable Speaker, we are at a halfway point of this administration since took office in June 2020. And today, I am pleased to table before you, sir, and this Assembly, a narrative midterm report of what I, the Premier, and Ministers do collectively to achieve in our duties and responsibilities. And the clerk will issue members with the report. The report highlights the activities of what we have done to date. And it's probably the first ever of such update report from the executive of the day to the new Assembly, Honourable Speaker. This is a good example of changes for the better, new initiatives, innovative ways and ideas that we are putting in place, ensuring transparency and accountability in our roles to the people of Niue. We assess and evaluate ourselves now and then, leading by example for the public service. We already made some changes to the government structure to strengthen the areas where needed support. As I mentioned in my last statement at the last Assembly, end of last year, that we will not progress. We will not progress nor improve without addressing and resolved past problems, unless we act now. Hence the reforms you're noticing, such as the separation of Cabinet and Parliament, a Ministry of Finance and Economy, and others to follow. We are taking one step at a time.
The Premier told BCN News that it is up to the people and the members of the Whanoi Kepule to decide on the performance of his administration. When asked if he himself is satisfied with the midterm report, Premier Tangelangi said that it is not just his report. A key part of the report is written by the government's chief administrator, the Secretary to Government.
Well, these are some of the things that this government have changed and have promised from the beginning: transparency and accountability to the people. And we have made significant changes in areas that we need to be strengthened, and I think we need to lead by example, and this is one of it. We report back to the House and the people what we have done. Myself as the Premier, the Ministers, and you will see it all on the report, and that's what we did.
In response to the Premier's midterm report, Common Role and Opposition member Olaf Jacobson asked if the government will return to the 5-day working week. Premier Tangelangi told the Whanoi Kepule that the government will continue to review the working week and are looking at the costs-benefit analysis of returning the full public service to a 5-day working week. According to the Premier, they will have to consider the increasing operational costs as well as the implications of the increasing fuel costs impacting on the public servants who live in the outer villages. Premier Tangelangi says that the government offices should all open on Friday, but as to whether all public servants will return to a 5-day week is still under review. As we wait to find out when the island will begin two-way quarantine-free travel with New Zealand, there was a robust debating in the Whanoi Kepule yesterday over whether or not tourism will resume. Here's more with Esther Pavihi.
To open or to keep the borders closed to tourists was always going to be the polarizing topic for the island. It was no surprise then that it would be the most robust debate at yesterday's Whanoi Kepule. While some people on the island will want those borders to remain closed to tourists, some, such as those in the business community and the government, will also want the slow reopening of those borders to tourists. At the Whanokepule yesterday, one of the 6 motions was from the Honourable Member for Aluftukelau, Honourable Vainga Tukuitonga, calling on the government to close all borders to tourists because of the increasing or the high number of people around the world with the COVID-19 coronavirus. What transpired during the debate of this motion at the Whanokepule yesterday also revealed wavering support for the Tangilangi government when 5 members who would normally vote for the government voted for the motion instead in a 8-8 draw. Ekepules from Avasele, Makefu, Liku, Hikutavake and Toi joined the opposition members, Olaf Jacobson, Terry Coe and Vainga Tukuitonga to support Vainga Tukuitonga's motion. Missing from the vote were Minister Mona Inu and Common Role Opposition Member Stanley Kaloni. The ultimate decision on whether or not tourists will be allowed to the island or when this will take place will be determined by Cabinet. Meanwhile, the Cabinet this morning met with senior health officials and the Disaster Council to decide on when quarantine-free travel with New Zealand will likely commence. BCN News spoke to Premier Tangilangi yesterday, who said that the government is still looking at April this year to open up for a 2-way quarantine-free travel with New Zealand. New Zealand allowed 1-way quarantine-free travel with Niue in March of last year.
The new Whanokepule at Halamahanga is expected to be opened in a soft opening on Friday 25th of this month. At the Whanokepule yesterday morning, the Premier informed the elected members of the government's wish to hold a soft opening of the new Parliament building later this month. Here's more on that story. Premier Dalton Tangilangi confirmed that the government is planning on holding a soft opening on the 25th of February after questions from the Alofi North Member of Parliament, Honourable Vainga Tukuitonga, asking why the Whanokepule was not informed of the plans for the opening of the new Parliament building. Honourable Tukuitonga said that a soft opening is not the traditional way for opening of iconic buildings such as the new Parliament. However, Premier Tangilangi said that it was the wish of the government to have a soft opening because ideally they would like to see some high-level officials from the New Zealand Cabinet Ministers attend the opening.
We're planning for soft opening, meaning that we'll give time for the public to enter and look into the house, because once the main opening, and we wouldn't be allowing anyone, because soft opening also allows for the officials to start moving in.
Premier Tangilangi also assured the members of the Whanokepule that the opening of the new Parliament building will allow the members of Parliament as well as the public to walk through and see for themselves the new Parliament building funded by the New Zealand and Australian government to the tune of more than $5 million. According to the 2020-2021 annual report of the Health Department, nearly 20% of our population are living with some form of non-communicable disease, such as type 2 diabetes, chronic kidney diseases, or hypertensive disorders. At the Whanokepule yesterday, Minister of Health Sauni Tangatule spoke about the need to do something to address these high numbers. Here's Esther Bavihi with more.
Minister Tangatule told the Whanokepule that he specifically requested that these figures be included in the report because of the concerning numbers and the cost of medications to deal with the non-communicable diseases on the island. The report highlighted people living with type 2 diabetes on the island, a total of 296. 151 are women and 145 are men. More than half of the people living with diabetes on the island are aged 50 to 69. That's a total of 167 out of the total 296. The report also showed that more people suffer from hypertensive disorders or high blood pressure, a total of 312. Most people living with high blood pressure are women, with 180, and 132 are men. By age group, similar to the diabetes figures, more than half of these people are between the ages 60 to 79, with 182 of them living with hypertensive disorders. According to the health report, 172 people on the island are living with gout. Men outnumber women with 143, and 29 women on the island are living with gout. And a very high number of our people are also living with chronic kidney disease or renal impairment, with 333. Most of them are men, 187 and 147 women are living with chronic kidney disease. During his statement, the Minister of Health said that he hopes for a national conversation on these figures so that the younger people will think wisely about their lifestyle and food consumption habits and change these before it is too late, and they too will end up as one of the high number of people suffering non-communicable diseases on the island.
The NCA results for 2021 were released last month on the 20th. The principal of Niue High School, Charles Ioane, said that he was pleased with the results. Here's more with Esther Pavihi. Principal Charles Ioane spoke with BCN News last Tuesday about the NCEA results of the students for last year. When compared to the past 5 years, he said that the performance was quite good and that they were maintaining good pass rates as compared to the New Zealand national NCEA average.
For level 1 this year, we were slightly below the national average for New Zealand, which was 77%. Our pass rate was 74%, which is it's okay. Our NCA level 2, our pass rate is 89%, which is the same as the New Zealand average. NCA level 3, our pass rate is 93%. The New Zealand national average is 71%. And our UE for this year, we managed a pass rate of 64%. More than half the students can go to university, whereas compared to the New Zealand average, theirs was on 60%. So, as the picture in previous years, we're doing okay as a school, and the students are doing all right as compared to their counterparts over in New Zealand schools.
Principal Ioane also told BCN News that the results of the external exams were good, but students found external exams to be more difficult than internal assessments. Some students were able to receive a merit and excellence grade, which was an improvement from previous years of achieving an A grade. Principal Ioane wishes for the students to continue to aim for merit and excellence grades. The National Disaster Management Office, along with the Niue Police, are working on improving information and tsunami warnings after the Tonga tsunami, January 15th. Esther Pavihi spoke with Chief of Police Tim Wilson about the confusion over dissemination of information on that day.
On that Friday evening more than 2 weeks ago, people were shocked and naturally afraid that the volcanic eruption happening more than 600 kilometers to the west of the island in the Kingdom of Tonga was heard and felt here in Niue. Residents of the villages on the southwestern coast were expecting a tsunami warning, but none was issued. Here's Chief Timothy Wilson to explain what happened on that day.
We have the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, PTWC, which is located in Honolulu, Hawaii. And they're the people responsible for monitoring the Pacific Ocean for any tsunami or anything that could cause a risk tsunami-wise to any of the islands in the Pacific. So what happened when they had the eruption of the volcano, obviously there was energy that was created from that. We heard the booms and that from the energy created from that. And the energy wave was sent across. Now, the scientists and everything measure regularly what's going on in the ocean to determine whether there's a threat to different countries. And what they'll do is if they determine that there's a threat for tsunami, is they will send that information to each country in the Pacific. And then it's up to the disaster management professionals within those countries to determine whether they're going to activate a tsunami alert, a tsunami advisory, tsunami warning, or whatever they do within their own countries. So when that eruption occurred, there was no alert that came out from the PTWC. So for that reason, there was no information for us at that time to determine or to tell us that we were under any threat of tsunami at that time.
The other issue for the police and the National Disaster Management Office is that the tsunami warning sirens located around the island are not working. And according to the chief, since he started in the role 2 years ago, most of these sirens haven't been working.
So we have a couple issues with tsunami warning sirens. Part of it is some of them are faulty at this point. The review is underway. That's going to be beginning soon. We've been waiting to have technicians come up from New Zealand to come and see exactly what's going on with the sirens. But because of COVID and quarantine requirements and stuff that hasn't been feasible. So we're in the process of, and in the very near future, we will have an assessment done of the system, and that will go down and then to Celcom, which is the people who built the system for us, and then the work plan on how to get that fixed as soon as possible will be drawn up and completed here in Niue. It's also important to understand that we could have a tsunami in Niue. It does not necessarily mean that the sirens are going to go off. Those sirens are to indicate to people that they need to move to higher ground. So as we know, most of our coastline is 10 plus meters off of the water. So that means we'd have to have a pretty big tsunami for those sirens to go off. So the public should not expect that every time a tsunami is going to come, that those sirens are going to go off.
The key message from the National Disaster Management Office and the police is for people to listen only to official information.
Last week, BCN News revealed Air Rarotonga's intentions to fly scheduled flights to Niue depending on the pandemic. CEO Ewan Smith is hoping for flights between the Cook Islands and Niue to happen mid-year this year. However, this news has not been well received by the locals, including the Member of Parliament for Alofi North, Honourable Vainga Tukuitonga. Here's more on that story. Honourable Tukuitonga posted her comments on BCN News Facebook page media, saying that Niue's population of fewer than 2,000 people will not cope and that the islands does not have the facilities to accommodate the people if infected. In her comments, she said that she also has friends in the Cook Islands who would want to come to Niue, but she is saying that this idea for Air Rarotonga to fly here is not good for Niue. Air Rarotonga have not yet approached the Niue government as they are still in the planning stage. Premier Dalton Tangilangi was not prepared to comment on the matter. And that is our news bulletin for BCN News tonight. Stay tuned with us next Tuesday for the Wangahau Niue Bulletin. Until then, nono hoa, moi monuina.